Bapak dan Ibu dan seluruh tamu undangan yang kami hormati, beberapa saat lagi acara akan segera dimulai. Untuk itu kami persilahkan Bapak dan Ibu sekalian untuk berkenan duduk di tempat duduk yang telah tersedia. Dan kami mohon kerjasamanya untuk menonaktifkan nada dering pada telepon genggam atau mengubahnya ke mode senyap atau silent mode atau getar selama acara berlangsung. Kami juga turut menyapa kepada Bapak dan Ibu sekalian seluruh insan OJK yang telah bergabung secara online di berbagai daerah. Bapak dan Ibu, di area summit kami juga telah menyediakan alat penerjemah bahasa atau simultaneous interpreter system yang dapat diambil pada pintu masuk area summit. Terima kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to inform you that a simultaneous interpretation system is available for the summit, and devices for translation from Indonesia to English and vice versa can be collected at the entrance to the summit area. Thank you.
Download aplikasi ShopeePay. Ayo download aplikasi ShopeePay. Bayar kris praktis bisa di mana aja. Aplikasi ringan, ayo download sekarang. Ayo download aplikasi ShopeePay. Ayo download aplikasi ShopeePay. Transfer gratis ke bank mana aja. Download sekarang aplikasi ShopeePay. Download aplikasi ShopeePay.
We are the 99% of Indonesians who have been exposed to fraud attempts.
Online fraud cases in Indonesia are $5 billion or 77 triliun rupiah.
97%. That's how many Indonesian businesses have been targeted by social engineering attacks in the past year.
VIDA will help you stop it.
We have developed a suite of identity verification solutions to combat these ever-evolving threats.
We have developed solutions that secures the entire document signing process.
No more password headache, no more anxiety about whether your account is secure. With VIDA authentication, VIDA's fraud detection solutions are designed for a world of AI-generated fraud.
The future of digital trust starts now, and it starts with us.
Dalam bisnis, ruang gerak adalah segalanya. BNI Direct hadir memberikan solusi. Satu platform digital terintegrasi dengan beragam pilihan solusi finansial untuk membawa bisnis Anda melompat lebih tinggi. BNI Direct, directing your business to new heights.
Ya, kembali kami ucapkan selamat pagi dan selamat datang kepada seluruh tamu undangan yang saat ini sudah hadir di Casablanca Hall. Kami persilahkan Bapak dan Ibu sekalian untuk berkenan segera duduk di tempat duduk yang telah kami sediakan, mengingat acara sesaat lagi akan segera kita mulai.
Kalau kita difitnah, tenang aja. Kita kasih sabar, dimonitor, kasih count. Konfirmasi dan lapor. Monitor, konfirmasi dan lapor. Awas jebakan Batman ngaku-ngaku CS Dana. Monitor, konfirmasi dan lapor. Awas jebakan Batman, CS palsu.
Pelanggan bete karena metode pembayaran terbatas? Gak perlu ribet, pakai FastPay. Konfirmasi transaksi masih manual? Gak perlu ribet, pakai FastPay. Waktu habis untuk kirim ke ribuan rekening satu persatu? Gak perlu ribet, pakai FastPay. Kelola bisnis makin satset pakai cara anti ribet, pakai FastPay. Bisa dapat notifikasi otomatis, cek status transaksi secara real time, dan dapat report transaksi harian. Integrasi juga fleksibel, mau lewat API atau langsung pakai dashboard. Pakai FastPay. Kelola keuangan bisnis jadi nggak perlu ribet.
Dengan Mitrans, kamu bisa satset tanpa takut ribet. Karena Mitrans memiliki banyak pilihan integrasi, mulai dari yang simple tanpa coding, hingga customize dengan API. Integrasi payment gateway lebih lancar dengan Mitrans.
Dengan Mitrans, kelola bisnis serba otomatis. Rekap transaksi.
Kembali kami persilahkan bagi Bapak dan Ibu sekalian yang sudah tiba di The Casablanca Hall. Kami persilahkan untuk segera duduk di tempat duduk yang telah disediakan, mengingat acara sesaat lagi akan segera kita mulai. Dan perlu kami ingatkan untuk kelancaran acara kita pada pagi hari ini, kami mohon kerjasamanya untuk memilih mode getar atau silent mode di telepon seluler Bapak dan Ibu sekalian selama berlangsungnya acara dari pagi hingga sore hari nanti. Jadi sekali lagi kami persilahkan kepada seluruh tamu undangan dan juga perwakilan vendor yang masih berada di area foyer, kami persilahkan untuk berkenan masuk. Terima kasih.
Main cashback, tangkap hadiahmu.
Kanan. Singkat lirik kanan OVO habis transaksi. Karena OVO Shoptakuler balik lagi. Pencet icon cashback, tangkap bolanya. Temukan OVO Poin spesial berhadiah. Transaksi pakai OVO sekarang.
Managing fast-changing and complex business risks can be really tough. Imagine having a tech partner who takes care of it, so you can focus on growing your business confidently. We spent 10 years of experience tackling fraud, credit, and compliance risk using rich history of data. Think Global Intelligent Network, a joint prevention strategy to control risk with a decision engine powered by AI. It's easy to integrate. We have domain experts customizing solution to fit your business in your industry. Whether you are in banking, fintech, retail, e-commerce, travel, or entertainment, we've got you covered. Our AI
Kembali kami persilahkan Bapak dan Ibu sekalian.
Into simple, real-time decisions.
Kembali kami persilahkan Bapak dan Ibu sekalian yang sudah tiba di The Casablanca Hall. Kami persilahkan untuk segera masuk dan duduk di tempat duduk yang telah kami sediakan, mengingat acara sesaat lagi akan segera kita mulai. Terima kasih. Kami persilahkan kepada seluruh tamu undangan yang sudah tiba untuk berkenan menempati deretan tempat duduk sisi bagian depan terlebih dahulu. Jadi sekali lagi kepada seluruh tamu undangan yang baru saja tiba, untuk dapat mengisi deretan kursi atau meja bagian depan terlebih dahulu. Dan kami ingatkan pula untuk memilih mode getar atau silent mode di telepon seluler Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Terima kasih.
Saatnya deposito di ratusan BPR di seluruh Indonesia lewat Deposito BPR by Komuna. Simpanan rasa investasi.
Bonita, yakin gak mau ikutan kita-kita? Tapi aman gak ya? Saya udah 3 bulan jalan loh setelah sebelumnya Bandung.
Saatnya deposito di ratusan BPR di seluruh Indonesia lewat Deposito BPR by Komuna. Simpanan rasa investasi.
VIP masuk, boleh. Ya. Santai aja dah.
Kami ucapkan selamat pagi dan selamat datang kepada Ketua Dewan Komisioner beserta jajaran anggota Dewan Komisioner Otoritas Jasa Keuangan Republik Indonesia beserta tamu VIP lainnya. Kami persilahkan kepada seluruh peserta, sekali lagi kepada seluruh peserta, kami persilahkan untuk segera bergegas masuk, mengingat acara sesaat lagi akan segera kita mulai. Jadi kepada seluruh peserta, kami persilahkan untuk bergegas masuk dan duduk di tempat duduk yang telah kami sediakan. Kami persilahkan kepada seluruh tamu undangan untuk mengisi barisan depan terlebih dahulu. Kami mohon kerjasamanya kepada seluruh tamu undangan yang baru saja tiba ataupun yang berada di belakang. Kami persilahkan untuk mengisi deretan kursi depan terlebih dahulu. Kembali kami ucapkan kepada seluruh tamu undangan yang baru saja tiba, kami mohon kerjasamanya untuk segera duduk mengingat acara akan segera kita mulai dan dapat mengisi deretan kursi bagian depan terlebih dahulu. Terima kasih. Hadirin yang kami hormati, mengawali rangkaian acara kita pada pagi hari ini, bersama kita akan menyanyikan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin dimohon berdiri. Lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin disilakan duduk kembali. Untuk kita semua, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Selamat pagi dan saya Dewi Kumala, izinkan saya menyapa tamu undangan terhormat yang sudah hadir bersama dengan kita dalam kesempatan kali ini. Kami ucapkan selamat datang kepada yang terhormat Ketua Dewan Komisioner Otoritas Jasa Keuangan Republik Indonesia, Bapak Mahendra Siregar. Terima kasih Bapak Mahendra telah berkenan hadir. Kami juga mengucapkan selamat datang kepada yang kami hormati Kepala Eksekutif Pengawas Pasar Modal, Keuangan Derivatif dan Bursa Karbon Otoritas Jasa Keuangan Republik Indonesia, Bapak Inarno Jayadi. Kepala Eksekutif Pengawas Inovasi Teknologi Sektor Keuangan, Aset Keuangan Digital dan Aset Kripto Otoritas Jasa Keuangan Republik Indonesia, Bapak Hasan Fauzi. Para Deputi Komisioner Otoritas Jasa Keuangan Republik Indonesia, Bapak Muhammad Ihsanuddin dan Bapak Bambang Mukti Riyadi. Anggota Badan Supervisi Otoritas Jasa Keuangan Republik Indonesia, Bapak Didit Nurdiat Moko. Staf Ahli Bidang Jasa Keuangan dan Pasar Modal Kementerian Keuangan, Bapak Arief Wibisono. Direktur Departemen Kebijakan Sistem Pembayaran Bank Indonesia, Ibu Fitria Irmi Triswati beserta jajaran. Para pejabat di lingkungan Otoritas Jasa Keuangan, Kementerian dan Lembaga Negara. Kami juga mengucapkan selamat datang kepada Ketua Umum Asosiasi Fintech Indonesia atau AFTEH, Bapak Pandu Syahrir. Ketua Umum Asosiasi Fintech Syariah Indonesia atau AFSI, Bapak Ronald Yusuf Wijaya. Sekretaris Jenderal Asosiasi Fintech Pendanaan Bersama Indonesia atau AFPI, Bapak Tiar Karbala. Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, seluruh tamu undangan yang kami hormati, rekan-rekan media, para panelis, moderator, dan juga para pengurus asosiasi, kembali kami ucapkan selamat pagi dan selamat datang dalam acara yang luar biasa. Selamat datang dalam The 6th Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024 dengan tema Technology Convergence Shaping the Future of Finance and Beyond. Hadirin yang kami hormati, Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024 mengajak kita semua untuk memahami manfaat dari inovasi teknologi lintas sektor yang membentuk layanan keuangan menjadi lebih inklusif dan mendorong pertumbuhan ekonomi yang berkelanjutan. Dan Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024 diselenggarakan atas sinergi dan kerjasama antara Otoritas Jasa Keuangan dengan Asosiasi Fintech Indonesia atau AFTEH beserta Asosiasi Fintech Syariah Indonesia atau AFSI dan Asosiasi Fintech Pendanaan Bersama Indonesia atau AFPI. Hadirin yang kami hormati, mengawali rangkaian acara kita pada pagi hari ini, sesaat lagi kita akan saksikan bersama sebuah tarian persembahan, tari kolaborasi, tari Nusantara Digital yang merupakan tari kreasi, kolaborasi industri fintech dan OJK yang menggambarkan kekuatan, semangat kebersamaan, kerjasama dalam mendorong pertumbuhan ekosistem keuangan digital yang inklusif berkelanjutan menuju Indonesia maju. Hadirin kita sambut tari kolaborasi, tari Nusantara Digital. Hadirin sekalian, boleh kita sekali lagi berikan tepuk tangan yang meriah untuk tari kolaborasi, Tari Nusantara Digital. Ya, sekali lagi Tari Nusantara Digital melambangkan kolaborasi antara industri financial technology dan OJK. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu yang kami hormati, selanjutnya sebagai pembuka, marilah kita simak bersama opening speech terkait laporan kegiatan Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024 yang akan disampaikan oleh Ketua Umum Aftek. Kita sambut yang kami hormati Bapak Pandu Syahrir.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Yang terhormat Pak Mahendra Siregar, Ketua Dewan Komisioner Otoritas Jasa Keuangan. Yang saya hormati juga Pak Hasan Fauzi, Kepala Eksekutif Pengawas Inovasi Teknologi Sektor Keuangan, Aset Keuangan Digital dan Aset Kripto OJK. Bapak Inarno, Kepala Eksekutif Pengawas Pasar Modal, Keuangan Derivatif dan Bursa Karbon OJK, Ibu Sofia Isabella Watimena, Ketua Dewan Audit OJK, Bapak Arief Wibisono, Staf Ahli Bidang Jasa Keuangan dan Pasar Modal Kementerian Keuangan, Ibu Fitria Irmi Triswati, Direktur Departemen Kebijakan Sistem Pembayaran Bank Indonesia, Ibu Diana Yumanita, Kepala Grup Perlindungan Konsumen Bank Indonesia, Bapak Ibu jajaran pejabat OJK, Bank Indonesia dan Kementerian Negara Lembaga, Bapak Ibu pembicara dan moderator, rekan-rekan Aftek, Dewan Pengawas, Dewan Etik dan Dewan Pengurus Harian, pimpinan asosiasi, perusahaan fintech, sponsor, mitra pendukung dan kontributor, dan tentunya para seluruh peserta, perwakilan regulator, akademisi, media, dan masyarakat umum. Sebelum saya mulai pagi ini dan laporan saya, Pak, saya mau membacakan pantun pembuka sebagai sambutan atas kehadiran Bapak Ibu sekalian. Kita mulai ya. Healing di Kokas Selasa dan Rabu. Habis belanja, lanjut nonton dan makan soto. Mari kita dorong fintech untuk terus maju. Selamat datang di Indonesia Fintech Summit dan Expo. Ini saya lihat juga ada dari yang asing, pantun is an Indonesian tradition to say hello and goodbye in a traditional event. So it is our part of our culture. Jadi Bapak Ibu dan hadirin yang saya hormati, pertama-tama marilah kita mengucapkan puji syukur kepada Allah SWT Tuhan Yang Maha Esa yang atas berkat dan rahmatnya hari ini kita bisa menyelenggarakan The Sixth Indonesia Fintech Summit dan Expo dalam keadaan sehat dan berbahagia. Hari ini Pak, lapor kita tiba di kegiatan puncak, kegiatan Bulan Fintech Nasional yang merupakan inisiatif dan upaya bersama AFTEK bersama dengan OJK, AFSI, dan AFPI dan didukung oleh Bank Indonesia untuk memfasilitasi diskusi mengenai perkembangan inovasi fintech dan merumuskan strategi penguatan regulasi. Tema tahun ini adalah Technology Convergence Shaping the Future Finance and Beyond. Ini menggambarkan sinergi inovasi fintech dan industri jasa keuangan untuk menciptakan produk dan layanan yang efisien, inklusif, berkelanjutan dan berdampak pada sektor dan perekonomian Indonesia. Dan selama 2 hari Pak, izin ini ada 25 sesi panel, 70 pembicara internasional dan nasional, dan topiknya mencakup anti-fraud, cyber security, literasi keuangan, open finance, digital talents, hingga artificial intelligence. Dan we will release a white paper, Digital Financial Planner Business, dan pedoman perlindungan data pribadi di industri fintech. Serta melakukan penandatangan komitmen bersama dengan anggota AFPI untuk mewujudkan fintech lending yang aman. Outside of the summit, kita juga ada expo Pak, 56 booth, dari berbagai perusahaan fintech, both startups, perbankan, dan juga universitas. And we will have an infinity stage yang in the expo area, yang akan menghadirkan 14 sesi talk show, edukasi, dan literasi yang terbuka bagi masyarakat umum. Nah karena kampanyenya juga sosial media juga sangat penting Pak, kita juga membuat hashtag Gue Afin, Anak Fintech Indonesia, dan hashtag Si Paling Fintech. Indonesia Fintech Summit yang Expo yang diharapkan akan mendorong masyarakat untuk lebih mengenal layanan fintech dan menjadi pengguna layanan keuangan yang cerdas. Bapak, Ibu, dan hadirin berbahagia, Indonesia telah menunjukkan progres yang luar biasa di bidang keuangan digital. Laporan e-Economy Asia yang dilakukan oleh Bain dan Google menunjukkan perekonomian digital Indonesia sudah mencapai $90 miliar dan diperkirakan akan mencapai 360 miliar di tahun 2030. Hal ini tercermin dengan adanya peningkatan transaksi QRIS, outstanding pembayaran fintech peer-to-peer, dan peningkatan transaksi kripto. Dan tahun ini juga telah menjadi milestone penting bagi industri fintech. Selain pengesahan Undang-Undang Pengembangan dan Penguatan Sektor Keuangan di tahun lalu, sekarang ada 2 model bisnis ITSK yang telah lulus dari Regulatory Sandbox yang sedang dalam pendaftaran ke OJK, yaitu Innovative Credit Scoring dan agregasi jasa keuangan. Kedepan kita akan menyambut dan mengoptimalkan peran berbagai inovasi teknologi di sektor keuangan melalui AI, tokenisasi, dan green fintech. Bapak, Ibu, dan hadirin yang saya hormati, kami ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada lagi OJK, Bank Indonesia, Kementerian Negara, AFSI, AFPI, narasumber, sponsor, kontributor, supporting partner, serta seluruh peserta Summit dan Expo yang terlibat aktif dalam penyelenggaraan AFSI dan BFN 2024. Semoga segala upaya kita mendapat ridho dari Allah dan membawa manfaat yang baik dalam mendukung perkembangan ekonomi fintech Indonesia. Saya akan mengakhiri lagi juga dengan pantun for all of you. We begin with a pantun, we end with a pantun. At the end we always say cakep, which just means beautiful. Dari Merauke hingga Sabang, berlayar jauh ke Nusantara. Dukung fintech untuk maju dan berkembang. Gue Afin, Anak Fintech Indonesia. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Bapak Pandu Syahril, Ketua Umum AFTEK, atas laporan kegiatan Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024 yang baru saja disampaikan. Hadirin yang kami hormati, selanjutnya marilah kita simak dan dengarkan bersama keynote remarks sekaligus pembukaan Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024 yang akan disampaikan oleh Ketua Dewan Komisioner Otoritas Jasa Keuangan Republik Indonesia. Kita sambut yang terhormat Bapak Mahendra Siregar. Kami persilahkan.
Kalau saya tidak membuka dengan pantun, karena saya tidak terlalu paham bagaimana membawakan Bantun secara digital. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Yang saya hormati Pak Hasan Fauzi, Kepala Eksekutif Bidang Pengawasan Inovasi Teknologi Sektor Keuangan, Aset Keuangan Digital dan Aset Kripto, Pak Inarno Jayadi, lalu Pak Pandu Sahrir, yang selain di Aftek, beberapa hari belakangan ini nampaknya memiliki tugas baru sehingga makin lama makin sulit diperoleh waktu kehadirannya. Pak Didit Nurdiatmoko yang saya hormati dari tentu Badan Supervisi OJK dan Bapak Ibu Deputi Komisioner OJK dan seluruh insan OJK, dan tentu juga Pak Ronald Yusuf Wijaya, Ketua Umum AFSI, Pak Tiar Karbala, ada, Sekjen Asosiasi Fintech Pendanaan Bersama Indonesia, AFPI, all international and national speakers, members of panels, dan seluruh Bapak Ibu yang hadir pada kesempatan ini, yang juga tentu mewakili banyak pemangku kepentingan dan perusahaan fintech yang berbahagia. Saya akan menyampaikan highlight saja dalam kesempatan ini, yaitu dalam 2 tahun terakhir ada 3 perkembangan yang luar biasa yang sangat mempengaruhi perkembangan inovasi teknologi digital termasuk fintech, dan tentunya implikasi risiko, peluang maupun tantangan bagi pengembangan fintech dan digital technology di Indonesia. Yang pertama adalah tentu yang kita semakin pahami dan kenali, walaupun bentuk dan wujudnya masih berkembang terus, yaitu persaingan geopolitik antara 2 negara superpower yang semula tentu berawal dari persaingan kepentingan mempengaruhi perkembangan dunia berdasarkan kepentingan politik masing-masing, tapi kemudian bergerak terus dan sekarang sudah menjadi satu persaingan dalam dunia digital dan teknologi juga. Yang paling terakhir adalah persaingan di antara mereka untuk penguasaan teknologi AI, Artificial Intelligence. Kita tahu bahwa satu negara menguasai baik teknologi dari semikonduktornya maupun pengembangan penggunaan bahasanya, sedangkan yang satu lagi adalah basis pengembangan manufaktur dari teknologi tadi dan juga bisa memberikan scalability kepada pemanfaatan AI karena struktur perekonomian dan manufakturnya yang sudah menjadi satu ekosistem yang lengkap. Namun dengan adanya pertikaian di geopolitik, maka di antara kedua mereka bisa dikatakan terbelah dan nampaknya tidak akan menjadi baik hubungannya dalam beberapa tahun ke depan, kalaupun pada akhirnya akan membaik. Dan risikonya adalah antara lain yang satu negara terus akan menguasai teknologi pengembangan semikonduktor dan pemanfaatannya, tapi dengan risiko tentu pengembangan yang memiliki biaya yang lebih tinggi daripada sebelumnya. Yang satunya lagi akan kehilangan kesempatan untuk beberapa waktu ke depan mengembangkan teknologi itu dan memanfaatkannya. Ada yang mengatakan yang satunya lagi ini ketinggalan sekitar 1,5 sampai 2 tahun dibandingkan yang di depan. Jadi itu adalah fenomena yang terjadi dengan kondisi dunia yang tidak harmonis dalam perspektif geopolitik, berpengaruh kepada ekonomi, perdagangan, investasi, dan pada gilirannya juga sampai kepada pengembangan dan pemanfaatan dari teknologi digital. Itu yang pertama. Yang kedua adalah bahwa di sisi yang lain, semua ekosistem perekonomian yang berbasis kepada sektor real semakin menggunakan teknologi digital, inovasi, dan pada gilirannya juga memanfaatkan keberadaan dan pengembangan dari fintech. Sehingga menjadi satu ekosistem dan multi-platform yang besar sekali, yang mengatur dari A sampai Z dari seluruh rantai pasok yang ada di dalam struktur industri yang ada di dunia ini. Dan pengembangannya ke depan adalah makin menuju kepada konvergensi di antara berbagai ekosistem tadi menjadi satu multi-platform yang semakin besar dan dahsyat. Ini yang saya rasa kita pun tentu mengantisipasi dan meresponnya dengan berbagai langkah yang tepat, termasuk upaya kita untuk melakukan pemikiran, pengembangan, diskusi, deliberasi yang kita lakukan pada pertemuan Fintech Summit dan Expo 2024 ini. Supaya Indonesia bukan saja tidak ketinggalan, tapi berada di tengah-tengah dalam pengembangan yang begitu cepat dan luar biasa. Yang tentu berhadapan dalam sisi yang lain adalah kondisi kemampuan investasi baik dari segi private equity, para penanam modal maupun juga venture capital yang tidak sama appetite-nya dan kapasitasnya dan kondisi katakanlah istilahnya war chest-nya dibandingkan 5 tahun dan sebelumnya. Yang ketiga, pengembangan ataupun perkembangan yang menarik adalah yang terjadi dalam minggu-minggu lalu di Amerika Serikat. Seseorang yang sebelumnya bisa dikatakan kripto skeptik, kemudian menjadi proponen dari kripto, terpilih sebagai Presiden Amerika Serikat yang akan datang. Sehingga kemudian kita lihat dampaknya juga kepada apa dinamika di sektor ini. Tapi ini karena merupakan perkembangan di negara superpower, tentu akan menjadi game changer juga. Baik kepada stakeholders-nya, kepada industrinya, dan juga tentu sedikit banyak kepada regulator dan kebijakan yang akan terjadi di kancah internasional. Nah, bagaimana kita menyikapi semua hal tadi? Nah, kalau dalam hal perspektif yang begitu dinamis, baik di geopolitik maupun juga di sektor real dan dinamikanya yang luar biasa, pemanfaatan inovasi dan teknologi dan digital, serta juga perkembangan politik di Amerika Serikat, saya ingin menyampaikan bahwa keberadaan pengawasan, kebijakan, pengaturan yang dilakukan oleh OJK, ya tentu saja memang saya bias, adalah yang terbaik yang dimungkinkan oleh negara kita. Karena di satu sisi undang-undang menegaskan bahwa dukungan terhadap pengembangan berbasis inovasi, berbasis keuangan digital, berbasis teknologi adalah masa depan dari pengembangan juga sektor keuangan Indonesia, tapi di lain sisi kita berada dalam satu perangkat, dalam satu organisasi, regulator, pemangku kebijakan dan mengatur maupun melakukan pengawasan yang selalu berbasis kepada pengutamaan pengelolaan risiko, risk management, dan tentu juga tata kelola yang baik atau good governance dan kepatuhan, compliance. Karena itu adalah basis dari pengaturan, penyusunan kebijakan, dan pengawasan yang memang bertanggung jawab dan bisa melihat keseluruhannya secara lengkap demi kepentingan bersama. Ini yang menjadikan pengembangan fintech Indonesia ke depan berbeda dengan yang lain. Karena di banyak negara lain, kalaupun tidak hampir semua, mayoritas dari para regulatornya belum bisa ditetapkan secara utuh spesifik yang mana. Karena ada aspek yang fokus kepada pengembangan teknologinya, ada yang fokus kepada aspek pengembangan fintech-nya secara spesifik, dan ada juga yang khawatir dan sangat cemas terhadap isu-isu governance, risk management, dan compliance. Dalam OJK, semua itu berada dalam satu organisasi dan setting yang sama. Dan secara kebetulan, mungkin tidak secara kebetulan 100%, secara perjalanan sejarah dan juga upaya kita untuk melakukannya dengan lebih baik, dalam konteks di bawah Pak Hasan Fauzi sebagai Kepala Eksekutif di ITSK, Aset Digital dan Kripto, bauran dari ketiga pejabat dengan latar belakang tadi itu lengkap. Pak Ihsan, latar belakangnya adalah dari IKNB atau non-bank financial company. Lalu kemudian Pak Joko? Pak Joko latar belakangnya adalah dari Bank Indonesia sebagai kepala departemen. Lalu yang terakhir yang baru saja masuk, Pak Ludi, mana Pak Ludi? Nah itu dia, Pak Ludi latar belakangnya adalah dari Bapepam atau capital market. Jadi we have the best of three. Dari non-bank financial sector, dari Bank Indonesia, dan dari pasar modal yang akan mengawal ketat. Secara berimbang, apa yang kita ingin dorong betul-betul, pengembangan inovasi teknologinya berbasis digital, termasuk juga untuk kripto, tapi di lain pihak, latar belakang mereka dan kami semua di OJK yang sangat kental dengan aspek good governance, risk management, dan compliance akan lebih memberikan zona yang tenang dan berimbang di antara kedua sisi ini, dengan tentu juga mengutamakan dan menjamin pelayanan maupun pelindungan konsumen. Jadi itu yang ingin kami sampaikan, bahwa dalam perubahan yang begitu dinamis di dunia, justru konvergensinya yang bisa ditafsirkan banyak cara di dunia, di berbagai negara, karena masih berkembang dengan cepat. Justru di Indonesia, saya rasa bukan kebetulan, tapi memang visinya demikian, dan diperkuat tentunya dengan undang-undang pengembangan dan perkuatan sektor keuangan, setup-nya berada pada kondisi yang paling baik yang bisa dimungkinkan oleh negara manapun di dunia. Dan untuk itu kami berharap semoga dengan Indonesian Financial Summit dan Expo yang ke-6 pada tahun ini, kita memiliki tekad dan pemahaman yang lebih baik terhadap di mana peran signifikan dan strategis dari fintech, baik dalam kancah membangun kepentingan perekonomian dan pembangunan nasional, maupun bagaimana kita mengelolanya dengan hal-hal yang sudah saya sampaikan tadi, berdasarkan tata kelola yang tepat, governance, dan juga compliance, dan di satu sisi lain kita yang tidak memiliki keberpihakan baik ke superpower yang satu maupun superpower yang lain dalam kondisi yang ideal untuk bisa meraup ke semua kepentingan pengembangan dan penguasaan teknologi itu ke depan. Terima kasih dan secara resmi dengan ini IFC ke-6 tahun 2024 saya nyatakan dibuka. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om.
Terima kasih Bapak Mahendra Siregar atas sambutannya dan mohon untuk masih tetap berada di atas panggung Bapak karena kita akan lanjutkan dengan pembukaan Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024 dan kami mengundang dengan hormat kepada Bapak Inarno Jayadi, Bapak Hasan Fauzi, Bapak Budi Ganda Subrata, Bapak Ronald Yusuf Wijaya, Bapak Tiar Karbala untuk berkenan naik ke atas panggung. Dan mohon berkenan kepada Bapak Mahendra Siregar untuk bersiap meletakkan tangan di atas tombol holo podium yang telah kami sediakan. Kami persilakan untuk bersiap dan kita akan hitung mundur bersama-sama. Dalam hitungan 3, 2, 1. Hadirin sekalian, dengan demikian The 6th Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024 telah resmi dibuka. Kita berikan tepuk tangan yang meriah. Kami persilakan untuk berfoto bersama. Bapak mohon izin untuk berada di tengah. Bapak izin di tengah panggung ya, silahkan di tengah panggung. Kita akan abadikan momen ini. Kita akan abadikan foto ini. Izin kita akan hitung 1, 2, 3. Sekali lagi 1, 2, 3 dengan semangat ya Pak ya. Semangat untuk inklusi keuangan digital di Indonesia. 1, 2, 3. Bapak dan Ibu sekalian boleh kita berikan apresiasi. Terima kasih. Mohon izin kita akan foto sekali lagi selfie di bawah Bapak, silahkan ke bawah dan kami persilahkan kepada seluruh tamu undangan untuk berkenan berdiri. Sekali lagi Bapak dan Ibu sekalian yang berada di belakang untuk berdiri sejenak. Kita akan selfie bersama. Jadi mungkin boleh berikan senyum terbaik. Kita akan foto bersama dengan seluruh peserta dari The 6th Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024. Boleh berikan senyum terbaik. 1, 2, 3. Sekali lagi 1, 2, 3. Boleh dengan gaya bebas semangat. 1, 2, 3 untuk inklusi keuangan digital di Indonesia. Terima kasih Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Kami persilahkan untuk kembali duduk. Terima kasih kepada Bapak Mahendra Siregar yang telah berkenan hadir dan membuka acara The 6th Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo pada pagi hari ini. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, saat ini bisa kita sampaikan bahwa Bapak Mahendra Siregar, Ketua Dewan Komisioner Otoritas Jasa Keuangan beserta jajaran VIP sedang mengunjungi booth dari The Sixth Indonesia Financial Technology Summit and Expo 2024, di mana acara Expo kita pada kesempatan kali ini diselenggarakan selama 2 hari, yakni hari ini dari tanggal 12 hingga besok tanggal 13 November 2024. Tentu saja kita mengangkat tema besar yakni Technology Convergence, Shaping the Future of Finance and Beyond. Bapak dan Ibu mohon untuk masih tetap berada di dalam ruangan karena kita akan segera lanjutkan dengan sesi berikutnya. Sekali lagi kami mohon kerjasamanya untuk tetap duduk di tempat duduk Bapak dan Ibu sekalian karena acara belum berakhir, kita akan segera lanjutkan dengan sesi berikutnya. Baik Bapak dan Ibu yang kami hormati, dengan berakhirnya acara pembukaan yang baru saja kita saksikan bersama, selanjutnya kita akan memasuki sesi pertama di rangkaian Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024, yakni sesi Catalyst Conversation, Subtech and RegTech Leveraging Technology to Build Safer Financial System in the Age of Fintech and Cybersecurity. Dan sekali lagi kami persilahkan Bapak dan Ibu sekalian untuk masih tetap berada di dalam ruangan ini karena sesaat lagi kita akan segera memasuki sesi Catalyst Conversation. Terima kasih. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu yang kami hormati, kita akan memasuki sesi pertama di Indonesia Fintech Summit and Expo 2024 hari ini, yakni Catalyst Conversation, Subtech and RegTech Leveraging Technology to Build Safer Financial Systems in the Age of Fintech and Cybersecurity. Baik Bapak dan Ibu yang kami hormati, acara ini atau sesi ini akan berlangsung dalam bahasa Inggris. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, this session will be led by Secretary General of AFTEC, Bapak Budi Ganda Subrata. Please allow me to briefly present his profile. Hadirin yang kami hormati, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Budi Ganda Subrata serves as Secretary General of Indonesia Fintech Association or AFTEC since 2021. He's concurrently Head of Regulatory and Public Affairs at Goto Financial, who oversees compliance, legal, corporate affairs, and government relation. And now please welcome Bapak Budi Ganda Subrata. Yes, and joining Bapak Budi Ganda Subrata on the stage today, we are also pleased to have Mr. Kimo Soromaki. He's the founder and CEO of Financial Network Analytics or FNA. As the founder and CEO of FNA and equipped with extensive experience in advising central banks and solving important issues around financial risk, Kimo leads FNA in making systemic risk visible and financial market infrastructures and institutions more resilient and efficient. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kimo Soromaki. And now Pak Budi and Mr. Kimo, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. When I saw this actually the 6th FinTech Summit, I couldn't believe that it's actually been 6 years running. And every year you see that the theme sort of evolves. When we started it about 6 years ago, there was a lot of hype, for lack of a better word, on fintech lending, and then you see more emerging technologies such as cryptography, blockchain, decentralized finance. And here we are today also talking more on technology, specifically on AI. However, with innovation, obviously comes also the risk, and the importance is how to balance it. So I'm happy to share the stage today with Kimmo, who is the founder of Financial Network Analytics. Kimmo, if you don't mind me start asking, we had the pleasure of briefly speaking behind the stage earlier. You started as an economist in the Bank of Finland back in 1997, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Can you tell us briefly, of course, introduce yourself? And I'm very fascinated and intrigued from an economist or from a central banker. Now you're in the space of cybersecurity, advising central banks. Can you tell me the journey of how you evolve from a regulator and now to a practitioner in a very specific area, which is also very, very apt and appropriate in today's climate?
Sure, and really great to be here today speaking with you. So really pleasure. So I started at the Bank of Finland in '97, but the job they gave me first was to build a simulator.
Oh, okay.
So that's how I, in a way, got into this technology and software development, and eventually setting up F&A as a software company. But that was the Finland was joining the European Union, and the Finnish banks wanted to know what will happen to their liquidity when Finland stops using the previous currency and starts using euro. So that was sort of the initiation into technology. Then I worked at the European Central Bank, mostly always around payments. There was the launch of the CLS, now the world's largest settlement system for FX, that I sort of like gave the regulatory approval for the European side. The New York Fed actually started to do research on networks, and that's how the company name came into being, Financial Network Analytics. Really after the financial crisis, everyone started to understand how interconnected the financial system is, and it's important to get visibility on that for risk and systemic risk analysis. And in a way, these two sort of simulations, building software, and then the research on network theory got me eventually to set up F&A about 10 years ago.
Yeah. No, thanks. You mentioned about systemic risk, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is around before the global financial crisis. And one thing we can learn is there's a lot of silos back then, right? Not a lot of people have real-time monitoring capabilities, know exactly what's happening in the mortgage market, which have a systemic effect on the financial market back then. But if you look at today, right? So back then, there's a challenge on monitoring. Do you think the challenge is still the same today, especially with you see more and more payments, retail and wholesale are going digital? There are conversations on central bank digital currency, and I know you are advising central banks, and this topic comes a lot. But how do you see the threats today, especially with a lot of people in the retail and wholesale segments are moving digital?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think the challenge still exists there. I set up the company with the purpose of helping central banks and supervisors to make sense of more granular data sources and more real-time data sources, really payments, trades, transaction-level data sets. But I think all over the world, all the authorities have had big challenges of actually getting access to this data in a real-time environment. So the risks still are there. However, I think like all this has in a way eclipsed recently by the introduction of a lot of new payment means, like you say, like potentially CBDCs in the future, but instant payment systems, digitization, financial inclusion, and I think the biggest challenge we have today is really around consumer fraud and scams.
So you mentioned consumer fraudulent and scam, and obviously we have everybody here from the regulators, industry practitioners, we have academicians as well. But first and foremost, they are also a customer or consumer or user of these financial services. In the past, I would say few years, Indonesia has seen a massive increase in adoption. But at the same time, we are seeing all kinds of different types of fraud, scams, account takeover. How do you see, or what is your advice for these companies to better equip themselves in facing and mitigating this risk? Because obviously, it's already difficult enough to get users to migrate digitally. There's always the trust issue, but once this trust is breached, then it's always going to be impossible to get them back on board, especially in a country where financial inclusion is still a challenge.
Yeah, I think Indonesia has been immensely successful on launching digital payment means, and I think it's a real opportunity for the economy, so smaller merchants being able to accept digital payments, and I've sort of seen it when I've been coming over the last few years here, like the development visibly. But at the same time, like you said, also the fraudsters are getting more active. But maybe just like if we think through sort of how this financial crime has evolved over the last, let's say, 20 years. When I started, it was the consumers who were getting hurt from financial crime, let's say 25 years ago. It was like rigging ATMs, like skimming cards. And then it started to change so that it was the banks who were getting hit by ransom requests and denial of service attacks. And then it was the payment systems, that started to get attacked by organized criminal gangs. And then it was the central bank systems, like the Bangladesh bank heist, where the central banks, so they were always moving towards the core. I think now it's sort of like flipped again, that it's the consumers that are getting scammed, and it's really driven by the digitization, financial inclusion, AI a lot, especially like in where I'm from in Finland. It's AI which has been driving the scams. And like you said, the threat there is that we already have lost, in a way, trust in email, SMSs, phone calls. I don't answer any phone calls. The question is am I next going to lose trust in these digital payment means? Because I cannot separate fraud from legitimate use cases. But I think a lot of I've been speaking about these scams topics now in, I think, around 43 countries, or together with 43 countries, and I think everyone is starting to circulate to the same idea that what we need to do is to collaborate more between the financial institutions and also with telecoms, because when fraudsters steal your money, they move it around in mule networks using the instant payment systems, so we can still find it somewhere in the system for a while before it migrates out. So that's one, but then also get more predictive tools to get back information to the banks, to the PSPs, that, hey, this is probably a fraudulent transaction because when we look at the recipient, it has had many transactions with non-mule accounts, for example. So like these type of systems are quite a lot lacking still today.
Okay. Let's talk about AI, because you mentioned it briefly. And again, we can touch upon a bit further on the application, because I personally believe AI is a brilliant technology, but at the same time, it's also a double-edged sword, right? Obviously, you can do it for the benefit of the user, but at the same time, you can also use it to scam users. In your experience, you've been in this space for quite a long time. Where do you see AI becoming a threat? Especially for the financial sector, what applications of AI do you see have been used for these scams and frauds that has been happening back again to the consumers recently?
Yeah, so if you think of AI, and now very sort of like a lot of people, I think, equal AI with generative AI, sort of large language models, but we have the other side of the AI, which is more like machine learning, building models that learn from past data. I don't think they're used so much by the fraudsters. It's the generative AI. And like generative AI is very good at creating some things that look real. So and who has use for those? It's the scammers who have use for things that look real. And also, like I'm from Finland originally, so I've been speaking with the Bank of Finland and the Banking Association and others in Finland with the police, and they said that the scams tripled from last year. And the driver for this is large language models, because the fraudsters can now speak fluent Finnish.
Interesting. So, as in verbally or text or?
Well, I think most of the scams are unwritten, but of course there's also the threat of the voice impersonation, deep fake videos and so forth. I think they're still a minority, but I think they're going to get more serious next year. But I think currently it's still mostly chat and like text messages, emails.
So let's talk about impersonation, because there's also deep fake and voice generation where people normally use for either social engineering, but as you can see, a lot of the digital financial services rely on eKYC, right? Where you take a picture of your selfie, you are onboarded without really human face-to-face interaction. Deepfake, I know, is becoming an issue, right? Where I can impersonate myself as Kimmo, for example, and use deepfake. Do you see AI can also, or not AI, probably like data science, machine learning can also counter some of these issues, and how can fintech players equip themselves from a lot of these challenges moving forward?
Yeah, I think if we sort of separate fraud, sort of unauthorized access to your like accounts, and scams where it's you actually make the payment, I think we'll always find technology to counter new technologies that the fraudsters use for the fraud, so the KYC. I think it's going to be a problem, but I think we'll find solutions for that problem. And I think a lot of financial institutions have been really good at driving the fraud rates down. So unauthorized access to your accounts is getting rarer than it was before. However, the social engineering, the gambling scams, the e-commerce scams, romance scams, investment scams, and those are the ones that are now skyrocketing because of the AI and the ability of the criminal organizations to scale up their operations and make even better, real-looking websites and sort of get better and more scalable at that.
Yeah. So you spoke about how these scams have scaled up. Now I'm putting myself as a regulator. How can I better monitor? As a regulator, what can I do in order to detect faster, mitigate faster? Because that's always an issue, right? It's like a cat and mouse game. We always play catch up, and the fraudster seems to always be not one, not two, but like 5 or 20 steps ahead. So how can regulators better equip themselves?
So one way to do is we recently launched together with or helped Paynet Malaysia and the Bank Negara Malaysia build a national fraud portal. So it's a utility for all the banks in the country to collaborate on getting money back once someone's been scammed. Because the problem is that a lot of so if you get scammed, what do you want to do? Do you want to get your money back, or do you want to go that the police goes after the criminal?
I want to get my money back.
Exactly.
As simple as that.
But most of the world is set up actually going after the criminal and not going after the money.
You're absolutely right. I actually never thought about it that way. I mean, we're so fixated with the governance, the escalation, but in reality, as users, right, you get scammed. Like,
especially if you lose all your life savings.
Yep, you're right.
You just want to get your money back. You don't care about anything else. So the problem that Malaysia had was that people called their banks, and the banks asked, like, did you make the payment yourself? And then I said, yes, I made the payment myself. Well, then it's your problem. It's not our problem because you made the payment. So that became, in a way, a political problem. So the Prime Minister said that let's set up a national scam response center where people can call, and we're going to help the people coordinate with the banks that where did the money go from that account, where did it go, can we still find it in the banking system so that we can freeze it and then return it back to the consumer. So what was launched in April was an automated way of to track and trace the funds and then with the purpose of freezing it. At the same time, you identify a lot of mule accounts, you put them in a mule database, share them with the industry, so that the banks know not to make payments to non-mule accounts. So we've been working actually with the similar type of concept here in Indonesia, with Bank Indonesia since January, with Ibu Diana. And the idea is the same, to build something that would enable or help the banks do their job better, which is small customer service, that if my customers get money stolen, I can still find it at some other bank and return it back to the consumer.
Right. No, that's encouraging, because obviously we've built a lot of governance and policy on escalation and focusing on how to catch these criminals. But as you rightly pointed out, as a customer, and especially if it involves my life saving, if I get scammed, my first priority is how to get that money back.
But I think there's loads of other sort of like regulatory, legal aspects that I think regulators can help with. Sort of like be able to. In many countries, banks are not able, or PSPs are not able to share data with each other. So I cannot, as a bank, tell you that like you have received a scam transaction.
Yes.
In Australia, for example, it's part of a anti-tipping law from the 70s.
Yes, yep.
In Philippines, I think the law is passing. In Singapore, it hasn't passed yet, but some other countries it has. So we're also working in UAE, where it's possible. In Canada, they're building an anti-scam center. I also am aware of the anti-scam center by the OJK that's been set up. So I think those are exactly the right directions to go.
So I want to go back on that, especially in the availability of data. Monitoring capabilities and resolution capabilities for scams and fraud relies on the availability of data to be able to monitor, to mitigate better and faster. But as you rightly pointed out, there are lots of these data governance policies, regulations with regards to personal identifiable information. In Indonesia, we have a law on banking that says any information with regards to the bank account holder is confidential and must not be shared. And I know a lot of the fintech players, mainly non-banks, if they want to equip themselves better in terms of mitigating fraud, scams, and any of these illegal activities, they also need to rely on external parties' data. So you mentioned availability of the data, sharing of the data. I know some countries are working on it, but have you seen, in your experience, a success story where, again, we spoke about collaboration. Everybody needs to collaborate and monitor better, but how do you maintain these data governance framework still in place, but then at the same time, issues on data sharing, better monitoring is also still achieved? Because I see it's a challenge, obviously it's a challenge in Indonesia today, but I'm curious to see whether there's a working model somewhere out there that you have seen so far.
So I think the AML legislation is actually now being used quite a lot for the fraud purposes as well. So if there is a suspicion of fraud or a fraud has already happened, so then data sharing can go on related to that case. I think that's been quite successful. And that's sort of underpinning, for example, the Malaysian National Fraud Portal. And what they've sort of like from the early KPIs that they've had is that they can recover about they have about 30% success rate of actually finding the money that's been scammed.
Yeah.
It's 100% if you report it very quickly.
Yes.
So they still find some of the accounts that the Mule network is using, and it's 0 if you report it like 2 weeks later, as it's already gone somewhere abroad, cannot be tracked anymore. So I think those are, and then I think they also reduced the time it takes to investigate a scam by 75% to about 30 minutes.
Okay.
I think they're starting from about 3 weeks, like a few years ago when it was a manual process bilaterally between the banks. So I think these sort of like collaborative utilities that help everyone involved, that work with the data sharing that is sort of minimal, or then available through the legislation. I think those are I think the success stories of today.
Okay, no, that's great, because obviously, as I said today, right, it is still a challenge right now. And it's always easy to hide behind the legal or the regulatory requirements to not share the data, right? Obviously, there's commercial interests as well that I want to protect my data. And
Yeah, when I was last week or 2 weeks ago in Denmark and Finland, and the banks told that our legal counsels tell us not to share any data because it's safer than sharing the data. So what we would really need is the regulator to give an interpretation guidance on the law, like how should we interpret it, so that we would be able to share data with each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's also, I would say, an assumption today, right? Banks, again, given that they are heavily regulated, they consider, and also some financial institution, they consider that infrastructure is much safer. And if you share it, let's say, to an authority or an investigator, like a governmental body, right, there's always this reluctance. So do you think that this is also an opportunity for regulators to step up and also to strengthen their infrastructure to be the hub of this data that can be used for monitoring purposes?
That's exactly what the Canadian Central Bank did. So they made a supervisory requirement that Payments Canada, who run the payment systems, they must build a fraud utility. And one of the requirements for that utility is that it will report back to the central bank from one place, like statistics around fraud, scams, behavior of the banks and so forth, so that the banks will not report individually as part of their supervisory requirements the fraud-related activities that they do, but they come from a utility. Yeah. So then, of course, the data for the central bank, or they also the supervisor, is going to be better because it's harmonized real-time. Yeah. And not based on banks reporting with Excel spreadsheets that the supervisor needs to compile together.
Do you see it as a trend now? Because obviously, yes, I mean, coming from a compliance background, I remember my team uploading Excel sheets of STRs, suspicious transaction reporting. Do you see more and then it sort of moved to FTP, but do you see now more of an API-based connectivity between regulators and fintech players? So now every time you see a flag, be it let's say, politically exposed person transaction or a high-risk transaction, that I can immediately report it to the regulators. Do you see it changing? Do you see it's more widely adopted in a lot of the countries that you've seen today?
That's a good question. So I think there are two models. One is where you centralize all the data in one place, sort of you get feeds, regular feeds, and you create this data lake. So that's how the National Fraud Portal, for example, was set up, that it's a data lake. A lot of I think smaller countries do it like that because the data still is manageable. And then the other one is that it's a pull, you go to the systems to get data once you need it through APIs. I think especially a larger, more data-rich, more complex environments. I think that's sort of the model that they are adapting.
Looking ahead, right? So we've spoken about the challenges. We've spoken about monitoring capabilities and the things that we have done today. How do you see the future of cybersecurity, especially now you've spent some time in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia. Indonesia is a very unique country. How do you see the trends and the threats of cybersecurity in Indonesia as one of the largest market in Southeast Asia?
I think it's a huge challenge because in a way, if you compare it to, you can compare it to two other solutions. One is what banks do internally, and most banks have very good systems to understand their account movements with their own customers and be able to trace funds. That's why criminals always move the first transaction out of the bank.
Yep.
Because the bank doesn't know the customers of the other bank and cannot trace them.
And we go back about the data sharing issues again.
The data sharing issues. In Europe, the first transaction is also cross-border because they know that it's even harder to track things cross-border. So that's one that we need to really build the same capabilities that banks have internally for these account-to-account transfers. We need to build them in a way nationwide, not only nationwide but also cross-border, because if it becomes difficult to move money for criminals inside a country, they'll start moving outside of the country. And then the other sort of like I think parallel is maybe credit card companies, because they created these dispute mechanisms, scheme rules, ability to track everything, you know, like within their own systems, insurance, so that I'm confident of paying with my credit card because I know that the credit card company will reimburse me, you know, like if something goes wrong. So in a way, like I think these infrastructures are not built for the instant payments or the account-to-account payments yet, and that is what is creating us problems. And we need to, in a way, as a collective, wherever I can move money, it needs to be able to track that data, needs to be collected so that the risks can be better managed.
So you mentioned about, you know, credit cards network. They have a global network. They have, you know, chargeback schemes, dispute resolution, which I think is great. And given everything now is moving towards more of a fast payments network, do you see that challenge is also being mitigated? Because as you said, right, with credit cards, I think I would say probably there's a delay in the settlement. There's always, you know, transactions are being authorized but settled probably T+1, T+2. So you can always refund or deny the transaction, whereas instant payment, that's it. The moment money goes out, and if it's cross-border, that's it, the money's gone. But now you see BIS has Nexus, you know, the cross-border instant payments. So do you see that this is also becoming an attention, and are there ways to mitigate it the same way how credit card companies have successfully mitigated their risk, especially in terms of cross-border transaction, and money goes out of the ecosystem?
I don't think the same way, but I think we need to come up with new ways of doing that. And I think the three main new ways that I see countries contemplating are the track and trace. So you can trace the funds, and then scoring accounts centrally, based on central data. So not only the bank's own data, but industry data, industry-wide data, and then scoring transactions with the industry data, and also using sort of my company's financial network analytics. So these network or graph features of the data. So the fact that you have interacted with a mule account or an account that has interacted with a mule account. So we look at the network that you play with. I think those are going to be important in building the right models for detecting better that, hey, this is a fraudulent transaction.
So when you say so, if I may rephrase it, it's more like looking at the nodes of the transaction and see like how big of the network is, and then based on
looking
that,
at the network position, who are you interacting with, who are they interacting with in the payment network, and using those as sort of signs or features in the models to decide whether a transaction is suspicious or not. Because currently the sending bank only knows its own customer. So it's very good at deciding whether you know, like this is a unauthorized access to one of my customers, but it knows nothing about the recipient account. Is this a fraudster who is actually, you know, like my customer is sending money to?
So, and I think this is also a nice segue. You mentioned about cross-border and the challenges, right? And I know that, especially with the age of digitalization, but also globalization, what I think, again, depending on, I mean, recent election in the US, there's a lot of discussion about, you know, protectionism, but we know that free trade is still the way to go. There's going to be like more cross-border transaction. How do you foster this innovation, especially between regulators? And going back again to the topic of sharing data, making sure that, as you said earlier, after track and trace, there's this scoring, but industry-wide data. And I'm assuming when we talk about industry-wide, it's not only industry-wide on a specific region like or country like Indonesia, but you need to be able to have visibility on what's happening in Southeast Asia, in Asia, and beyond. So how do you encourage and foster more data sharing, more collaboration? Because again, silo, challenges, you know, political interests, it's always like an interesting dynamics in order to make this happen. What's your advice on how to foster
conceptually, how to foster it, because conceptually it's simple what needs to get done. So if you're able to track inside the bank, then inside the country, well, if you build instant payment systems cross-border, then you will also need those same facilities for the cross-border transactions. So how we are sort of thinking about it is with connecting these national fraud portals together, so that you can get the inputs from one portal as outputs in the other, and say that, hey, this originated from another country, but it's a fraudulent transaction chain. Can you track where it's going on in your country? But how do you foster that? I think that's sort of like a maybe more difficult question. I think 1 year ago when I was in Finland, the central bank said to me that I understand completely what you're saying. We see that the threat is real, but I don't think there's anything we can do about it today. The situation needs to get worse before.
That's encouraging.
I'm going to be honest with you. The situation needs to get worse before. So then the scams tripled from last year, January to June, to this year, January to June. And okay, now we can do something about it. I think it's the same thing with this, cross-border, like the situation. Currently, I don't think there's a huge amount of cross-border flows anyhow in Asia, especially to fraudulent transactions. Most of them are moved domestically, moved to crypto, moved to cash. Bought something online. So I don't think the cross-border problem is today big. So I think it just needs to get worse in order to be something that needs to be collaborated on.
I mean, well, if you think about it, yes, at least there's a progress and there's a path forward, right? So I am somewhat encouraged. It seems that we have a lot of homework to do. But given the trend and the things that have happened and some of the approaches that a lot of the central banks, FSAs, regulators have done together with the industries and also people like yourself, it doesn't seem to be too overwhelming of an issue to be solved. And again, it's a solvable problem.
With the Nexus, for example, I think they 100% understand the potential problems that it can create when you have large volumes of cross-border transactions. So I think they're serious about trying to build something before it goes live. In a way, the same with Canadian central bank. So they don't have an instant payment system today, but they looked at around the world, and where every country that has built an instant payment system has immediately a massive problem with scams. So they want to preempt it and build these systems in place on day one of operations, like the central bank said.
Well, as the old saying, the first step to solve a problem is to acknowledge and to admit that you have a problem. So,
interestingly, also Southeast Asia, I think, is the world leader in this, because Southeast Asia built first instant payment systems.
Yes. Yep.
So they aren't there yet in Europe, especially Southern Europe. In Northern Europe, you already have instant payment systems, and they have already the problems as well.
Yeah.
In the US, you have a couple of Zelle, Venmo. Latin America doesn't have them. Africa has instant payment systems, massive problems as well. But I think, with the population, with the financial inclusion, with the available, victims in Southeast Asia, the problem is biggest here. Yeah. And I think the solutions that are developed here will be deployed elsewhere in the world as well, but they will be done first here.
Yeah, it's a bit unique because, as you said, in US, a lot of the fast payment were driven by the private sector, right? So you have the likes of Venmo and everything else. Whereas in Indonesia, in a way, it started with the industry, but central bank also sort of, quote unquote, taken control with, the fast payment networks. They've looked at India with IMPS and some schemes as well. And you look at it also, and I think the time is also appropriate with Nexus as well, right? BIS is, connecting a lot of these quote unquote switching networks in order to establish not as a centralized authority, but also more of a bilateral network of different switching connecting to switching networks. So yeah, as I said, I think it is encouraging to see that there's a lot of steps. We are acknowledging that there's an issue and that there are steps being mitigated.
It's sort of the hard position where you can't look somewhere else and copy it over.
That's true. At least we learn from, the good thing is, there's a mistake and you learn from other people's mistake as well. Kimo, pleasure. With that, I conclude today's talk, but it's a pleasure having you on stage with us. And I hope everyone can learn a thing or two from our conversation today. And again, happy to have you here, and we'll see you in other opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, Kimo Soramaki.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bapak Budi Ganda Subrata and Mr. Kimo Soramaki. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please give a round of applause. Boleh kita berikan tepuk tangan yang meriah Once again, thank you for sharing your expertise about the fintech and cybersecurity. Please return to your seat. Ladies and gentlemen, a brief highlight for the session is about the subtech and regtech playing pivotal roles in enhancing cybersecurity for digital economy. By strengthening collaboration between regulators and fintech players can ensure the safe, sustainable growth of Indonesia's digital economy. Baik, hadirin